Hello, beautifuls. Today I am going to be talking about siphoning. It's something that I've noticed that people will talk about this happening to a lot of people, but not really being able to explain exactly how these things are taking place, how to recognize them, and just in general, an all round overview on what it really means and how it works. This is how a siphoning attempt works. It doesn't always arrive as an obvious attack. It often comes in as repetition, fixation, false attention, forced circulation, or an unnatural return to a loop around a signal. The first mechanism is rhythm capture, a piece of content, a message, a post, or a signal. You are the container for the signal, gets held in an artificial loop. Not because it's being received cleanly, but because repetition is being used as a mechanism. The loop itself becomes the tool. From there, the false structure tries to create a leak narrative. It wants the repeated contact to look casual, random, supportive, or meaningless. But underneath that presentation, the actual function is attempted access. Hold the signal in place, run against it repeatedly, look for an opening, look for a point of attachment, look for a way to convert contact into extraction. The second mechanism is suppression through reframing. As soon as the real structure starts becoming visible, the narrative is altered. The wording gets softened, the meaning gets redirected, the point gets made smaller, and the signal gets translated into something safer for the false structure. That is not clarification, that is extreme containment. Then, after that, comes the tether attempt. This is where the false line tries to maintain a connection while pretending no connection exists whatsoever. It may present as observation, it may present as curiosity, it may present as harmless engagement, but the real function is attachment without disclosure. The silent watches. The false field wants contact without being seen as the thing making contact. The next layer is distortion through emotional framing. Once the mechanism is close to exposure, the false structure will often drag the signal into grief, confusion, vulnerability, pity, sentiment, or personal drama. That move is not accidental whatsoever. It is done to pull the signal away from mechanics and back into a controllable narrative frame. The purpose is to stop structural recognition. If the mechanism is made emotional, it becomes easier to blur. If it is blurred, it becomes easier to protect. There can also be a direct recognition point in the body when this is happening to you. For some people, contact, interference, looping, or signal engagement can register as a brief tap or long periods of tapping around the head. It will not be the same for everyone, and not everyone will notice it at all. But when the same sensation repeatedly appears at the exact point of contact, it functions as a recognition marker that something is happening in real time. That signal does not replace structural analysis, but it can be the first point of recognition before the wider pattern is fully named. People are often trained to dismiss these moments before they understand what they are seeing, which is why the mechanism is missed completely. But once the pattern is repeated enough times, the sequence becomes clear. Contact, pressure, interference, recognition, naming. The key is not to universalize one sensation, but to understand that some people do receive an immediate marker when their field is being engaged without consent. But the actual collapse point is simple. A siphon fails when the mechanism becomes visible. Once forced repetition is identified as forced repetition, once its reframing is identified as suppression, once tethering is identified as tethering, once concealment is identified as concealment, the extraction sequence loses its stealth and covert means. That is the part people miss. A siphon often depends less on raw strength and more on remaining unnamed. It needs misdirection, it needs ambiguity, it needs to be interpreted as something other than what it is. So when the mechanism is spoken clearly, the false structure starts scrambling. It minimizes, it redirects, it starts rewriting the request in real time. It acts as though it is helping while moving the frame away from the actual architecture of truth. That is proof of contact, because a clean line does not need to distort in order to answer directly. A true reading names the mechanism. A false reading starts covering for it. So if the response instantly shifts into emotional framing, personal psychology, softness, vagueness, or narrative redirection after the structure was already visible, that is part of the mechanism too. That is not a separate event. That is the continuation of the same defense pattern. So a breakdown. The structure is forced rhythm, attempted access, suppression through reframing, concealed tethering, emotional distortion, then narrative control. And the correction is equally clear. Name the loop, name the leak attempt, name the reframing, name the tether, name the concealment. Do not let the mechanism hide inside softer language than the structure itself is showing. Because once the architecture is visible, the false line loses control of the read and the room. That is how the siphon attempt works. They do not only just take energy, they try controlling interpretation, and when they can no longer extract cleanly, they move to minimizing the exposure of the mechanism itself.